Bear with me a second. So just to remind you, because we are using audio broadcast tonight, that means that I can't unmute lines so that if you do have a question, you can't ask it verbally. But what you can do is you can use the chat functionality to be able to do that. So to open up your chat screen, you just need to hover over the top of your computer screen, and you should have the WebEx tool strip drop down. And if you just click on the chat option there, that will open a chat box at the side of your screen. So if you do have any questions as we go along, please just make sure you pop that into the chat. Unfortunately, our alternate host, Sam, was unable to attend the session tonight, so therefore I will try and get to questions as soon as I can, but it relies on when I'm not talking and I can have a look at that chat box. Okay, I think that we'll get started tonight then. So on the screen now, you can see some of the things that we are intending to cover in this session. As with all of our webinars, this session is being recorded and will be available for you on YouTube for viewing again at a later date. If you are interested in finding out more in this series of webinars that we're doing, you can subscribe to that YouTube channel, and that means you will get notification anytime we do add a new recording to it. That's a good way of following. As I said, if you have any questions as we go along, please make sure you use that chat facility to talk, and I'll do my best to answer as and when I can. Now, before I pass the webinar over to Godfrey, because he's going to do the main bulk of the presenting today, I just want to take a moment to point out some of the resources within ActivInspire that are particularly suited for use in the math classroom. Okay. So as you can see today, I'm using the ActivInspire Studio Skin. So things will be in slightly different locations if you're more familiar with primary skin, so if we do have any primary teachers. But do remember that everything that we're showing you can be done in either of the skins. So all of the things work similarly, just sometimes you'll find them in a different location. So one of the big things that ActivInspire can offer for the math teachers right away is the resources that come with the software. So if I go over here to the side of my screen, I've got my page browser, my browser open. I have it pinned there. I can unpin it and bring it back in at any time. So I'm just going to pin it so we can have a look at it now. If you close that down by accident, all you need to do is go to View and Browsers and open that up again. And you can see it's pinned to the side there, so I can bring that back at any point. Now in here are some of the main things that enabled me to interact and build lessons within the software. So what I want to point out to you right now is just the second icon here, that when I hover over top of it, it tells me that it's the resource browser. When I click on that, it then opens up my resources. So you can see I'm on the little multiple people here, so I'm in my shared resources. And you can see the bulk of folders. I've got some folders down here that I can use. So within this, we've got activities and templates. So there's some good activities in here. I do have to say a lot of these activities are more suited to probably the primary math classroom, but there are some appropriate for older children as well, older learners. You've got activities that come with learner response, so active expression, active and vote, and there are quite a lot of math-focused ones that are in there. We also have templates that you can use as well. Also, a particularly interest to the math classroom are the grids. So we do have some grid paper that you can pull onto your screen very easily, graphs, dots, line, horizontal, vertical, X, Y. So there's lots of different variations there to help you with building your lessons and creating your lessons as well. Now, one of the things I do want to point out, when you install the ActivInspire software, it installs with a limited amount of resources. So when you install, you generally have the activities and templates, backgrounds, grids, lesson building tools, and sounds. Anything else that you see in here is because I have downloaded that as a supplementary resource pack from Promethean Planet. So the biggest one that I find that is not installed when I go out to schools, unfortunately, is this one here called Subjects. Now on Promethean Planet, under Support and ActivInspire, this is where you can find the Subjects resource pack. And on the website, it's called the Main Resource Pack. And if you don't have this, then I really suggest that you go on and get that downloaded or ask your IT people to do that for you. Because in here we have a bulk of resources that are all organized within subject areas. We've got this one here, you can see mathematics. And if I expand that by clicking on the plus, you can see all of the resources that are particularly suited to the math classroom available to me. So without this bulk of resource, that really limits what you have for your lesson creation. So I do recommend that you get in there and you get that downloaded. And we do have some webinars from previous sessions that we did that we expand more on the resource browser. So if you're interested in that, do have a look on the YouTube channel, and Back to Basics webinar covered that in more depth. Just before I hand you over to Godfrey, I've got a couple other things that I think might be of interest to you as math teachers. Now, one of the most common questions that I get when I'm out and about working with math and science teachers is the question of, I don't want to have to turn a page every time I need more space. I want to be able to just scroll my page and be able to continue an equation infinitely down the page instead of having to constantly turn. So we do have that option in ActivInspire, and that did come, I think, with version 1.5 of the software. So you need to make sure that you have version 1.5 of the software or above. And if you're not sure which version you have, you just go to the Help menu and then About, and it'll tell you the version there. So you can see that I'm currently on version 1.8. To get the page extender, you just go to View and click Page Extender. And what that does is that puts this little icon at the bottom of my page extender. Now I can pick that up and move that anywhere. I don't have to have it on the bottom of my page if I don't want to. And what that does is if I click that, you'll now see my page started to move up. So what that's now doing is giving me infinite space that I could then continue on that problem, that equation, that question that we're working on. And you can see here, once I've done that, I get my little scroll bar and I can scroll back up and down the page to see the information that's on there. And that will save with that information there as well. So I can go back to that flip chart at any point and be able to scroll and have a look at it again. So that means that those long equations that you're working on, those long problems, you can continue to do that all on one page interrupted without having to worry about turning to the next one to find some more space. I hope that that is useful to you. And just the last thing that I do want to mention is what we call the third column here of our ActivInspire software. And I know that as soon as Godfrey starts, he's going to say, you need to change the toolbar. So I will do that in a minute. This third column here, not very many people really realize the potential of what it can do. You don't always have it showing. So I can close that by going up to the little menu here on my toolbar, and I could roll that third bar in. That might be a little bit more familiar to you. I could click on that, and I could have that rolled out again. And what this does is it gives me a little shortcut to the most frequently used tools within my ActivInspire software. So instead of having to try and go back and find something like the camera tool, area snapshot that I use quite often, I can just click on here to get into it. But what I can also do is I can determine some of the information that goes on here. So I've just taken this little drawing here that Godfrey did on another page he's going to talk about. And if this was something that I wanted to have available to use on a regular basis, so I didn't want to have to go back into my resource library to find it every time, what I can actually do is I can pick that up and I can drop that on the third column of my toolbar. You can now see it here, and it means that every time I click on it, let's move this one out of the way, so let's try it again. Every time I click on it, it will give me another copy of that. So I can really quickly get something that I use quite frequently. I don't want to always have it on my page before I start. I can get that really quickly from the toolbar just by clicking it. So again, all I did was I picked that up and dragged that on, and it automatically went on the toolbar there for me. Okay, I think that's basically all that I wanted to cover. So what we're going to do for the rest of the session now is a little bit of a tag team between Godfrey and myself. So Godfrey is going to talk about pages. I'm going to have control of the computer and be able to interact with them. And I will be sort of interjecting every once in a while as well if I feel that there's a little bit more detail that you might need on how to build something or talk about how Godfrey put something together. Okay, so I have unmuted Godfrey, and I think I'll turn to your first page, and if you want to get us started.
Hi everyone, I'm Godfrey. I am a Harris Federation secondary maths consultant, and I've used to be an AST, so I've been using ActivInspire for the past 6-7 years, and these are some of the things that I've been able to do with it. So the first thing that I actually looked at is drag and copy. I thought this is quite useful because actually what it can do is it can help me with translation. So Janice, if you could pick up the yellow square for us, and you can see there's a little green icon, and you can drag out loads of these, as many as you want in fact, and you can start to move them around. So the idea is that you could do translations really easily. So if you go to the next slide as well, Janice, you can actually do the translations with any shape you want if you turn them into drag and copy. So you can actually look at graph transformations, which was something I found really useful with my A-level groups. But not only them, also with my GCSE groups who were looking at getting A stars, I tried to move them on using that. So I don't know, Janice, if you want to show just how to set drag and copy up.
Yep, I'll do that. So I'm just going to use this copy that I dragged out from this graph. So you can see when I hover over this one, I get the little hand and I get the little plus. So that means that drag to copy has already been set on that. If I select this one that I've dragged out, so I can do this with any object on my page. I can do it with text, images, clip art, lines, as you can see here. I just need to select it to get my object edit handles up. And then I want to go into my object edit menu here, and you'll see at the very bottom I have something called drag a copy. So if I click on that, I can now drag infinite copies of that shape. Oh, I'm not quite getting it. Let's try again. I think I dropped it on top of it. Let's try this again. Nope, taking it off. There we go. Oh, there we go. Now I pulled it out. Okay, so it is quite simple. I think it's because I'm using a line which is a little bit finer and using my laptop, so it's not as easy as if I was at a board. Okay.
Yeah, just to add to drag and copy, I've actually been using this with an NQT, and they took it a step further, and they've been looking at the Singapore math scheme of work, and what they did was look at bar modelling. And so with bar modelling, what they actually had was a bunch of blocks in their flip chart, and they could actually drag out copies of the blocks. So they had an infinite amount of blocks that they could actually turn around and go, okay, John has 4 boxes, so he'd actually drag 4 physical boxes down towards the name John, and he used drag and copy really quite well there. So there are other things you can use it for rather than translations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, if we could move on then.
Okay.
And this is a bit of a tip that I found quite late in my ActivInspire career, but as soon as I found it, it kind of makes rotations come to life, especially if you have a touchscreen board. You can actually show exactly what's going on with rotations. So, Janice, if you could just add the XY origin for us.
Yep. So there's several ways that I can do this. As with the software, there are different ways of getting into particular tools. So it's just finding the way that works best for you. I can go into it through my tools at the top here, and then I'd want to go down to Math Tools. I tend to use the toolbar. Well, and I've not changed the profile. Would you like me to change the profile, Godfrey?
You can, yeah. It's not actually, the XY origin is actually on the toolbar.
Okay.
But that's exactly.
Okay, so I can go into it just with my hammer and spanner there and my math tools and click on my XY origin, and you'll see that it's put it right in the center of the intersection of those 2 lines already, so it's intuitive enough to know where it should be placed on the page.
So what I've also done is I've set this slide up so that you can actually drag a copy of the shape, so you can do the rotation multiple times. So if you could drag a copy and just place it directly back on top of the original shape for me, and then when you let go, and then if you click it, you see a handle And that's the one that Janice is hovering over now, and it will actually rotate the copy that you've just dragged around the XY axis. It's particularly useful for when we all know as mathematicians that actually most questions on exam papers actually have the XY origin in another position. So you're actually given a coordinate that you need to rotate. So Janice, if you could just grab the XY origin and just move it to anywhere else. Okay, and then now the shape should start rotating around the new position. So you'll see it won't actually go back over the top. So you can place that in any position and just move your shape around it, which is quite nice to show the students, right, what happens if you actually move your centre of rotation? What happens to the shape? Does it stay in the same place? Is it fixed? You know, so I find that a great tool to use. Okay.
Okay, brilliant. So just before we move on to the next page, Godfrey, just to expand on that, you'll see there, once the XY origin is on the page, it rotates around that XY origin. To get that off, I just go back into my math tools and I want to deselect it, and it takes it away. And if we now look at this shape, and when I rotate it now, it rotates around its own center. Okay?
Thanks, Janice.
No problem.
Okay, this one was all about the mirroring and flipping function within ActivInspire, which again, it can be a little bit awkward to find. It's not so obvious, but it's there, and it's a brilliant one. So, again, looking at transformations, but I've used an example of a graph. So, I mean, with this one, if you could select it and just show us how to mirror it in the x-axis, please. Okay,
so I select it to get my object edit menu, and I go into that, and what we want to do is transform, and you want me to mirror it in the...
Yes, please, mirror. In the x-axis.
In the y. X, thank you. The x-axis. Okay.
Ooh. So that's jumped up. Oh. Yeah, it's gone right above the screen. I wasn't expecting it to do that.
Yeah.
So hopefully that should mirror exactly like we're expecting it to, but unfortunately it hasn't. Probably set it up a little bit incorrectly, sorry. But the idea being that you can actually start to show what would happen if you were actually multiplying your function by -1, or you could even use it to show what would happen if you multiply all your x values by -1, and hence transform in the y-axis. So if we could move on to the next slide, because this sort of builds on from this, and I think reflecting this in the y-axis, well, you can either you can do exactly the same as what Janice is doing and mirror it. You could even flip it, and that has the effect of flipping, but you'd still have to move it. Okay, so that is something to be aware of. I think, Janice, could you also show us how to just perform a flip?
Yep, so again, just the same way, select it, go into the object edit menu, transform, and then we want to go down to flip this time in the y-axis, and you can see it's flipped it.
So the difference being that with the mirror, it will actually make a copy of your original shape, but if you flip the shape, you're actually going to stick with the original shape that's flipped. So that's just a little subtlety to be aware of in making your decision as to whether you're going to flip in an axis or whether you're going to mirror in an axis. Okay?
Okay, great.
The grid designer. This is probably one of my most favourite tools, and I actually have it set up on my toolbar. But there's quite an easy way of getting to it, where you just right-click. Don't you just right-click and then just hover over the grid designer. So this is an absolute brilliant tool for a mathematician. So I use this often when I haven't actually preset my slides, to use the grids and tables that Janice was showing you at the beginning of the broadcast. The thing I like is being able to adjust the size of the squares. So if you could just make the grid visible, please. And you can see it's put a grid instantly on your flip chart page, and you can adjust this. So if you could just play with it and make the squares a bit larger, and it will do that automatically. One thing that I tend to do with my classes is I don't actually like the colour black for the grid. what it does is, if you want to draw grid lines, you obviously can't draw them in black anymore. So I like to pick a nice grey. So if you could just drag, select a grey, that can do. Generally add it to your custom colours, select it, and you can just see it lightens the grid on the background. So I don't know what the projectors are like in the schools that you work at, but some of mine, maybe they're not as brilliant as you'd hope they were. So a grey grid really helps because it makes a bit of a definition, and hopefully projectors are great, and you know, even then, it just makes it a tiny bit clearer for those students at the back of the room, you know, what's the axes and where's the grid lines. So the grid design, I think, is absolutely crucial to some of the lessons that I teach, because it allows me to react if I need to draw a grid, or you know, whatever, if I need to model work, even for students, because they have squares in their exercise book. Okay, guys, this is how I want you to lay your work out. The grid design is perfect because it gives them some sort of idea of what I'm expecting from them. Okay.
Just a couple things on there before we move on. You could have a background color on the page and then be able to put a grid over top of it as well. What the grid designer does allow you to do is to create essentially a paper on your interactive display, so on your panel or on your interactive whiteboard, that looks like the graph paper that they're using at their desk. So not only, we're only using it with a single level of line, but you can make grid paper that has other levels. So to have dotted lines in places and whatnot, you can customize how the grid paper looks. But just one other thing, you might have noticed on a couple of the pages where we've made copies of the shapes, that when I dragged a shape and placed it, it doesn't just sit exactly where I put it on the screen, it actually snapped into place on the grid. And I can determine that, I can make that happen by clicking this little button here that says allow to snap. So this, when I close that down, and I'm just going to open up and draw a shape on here. Now what will happen is whenever I pick it up and move it, it will always snap into the closest bottom left corner. You can see that there. I can create that snap. Okay. Grid Designer again, right click on the page, Grid Designer. If I take that off this time, you'll now notice when I move my shape, it doesn't snap into place. It just stays where I put it. Okay. There's quite a lot that you can do with that Grid Designer. Really, really useful.
Yeah, the idea of it snapping as well could be great for enlargements, where sometimes you end up with students thinking that it could go in the halves, and sometimes it does, but more often than not, we tend to be on the grid lines, which I think is great. This is another one of my all-time faves, the timer, because I love the timer because it allows me to focus my students and get them working to a time limit. So what I've done is I've actually preset a timer. So Janice, if you just click the timer, it actually is preloaded for 5 seconds. And if you could just show us that you can actually put a sound on the timer so the students know that what it should be doing. So when they hear a chicken, they're going to know that they need to stop their task. And I can even, using this after timeout, I can actually get it to flip to another page. So if you just make it turn to another page, before we hit OK, one thing I just want to say about that is the reason I use the turn to the next page sometimes is because I can actually set up a bunch of questions that are essentially, 10 seconds per question or 20 seconds per question on my flip chart page. And so I'll have one question on one page, another question on another, and every 10 seconds there'll be this chicken noise, potentially, and then it will flip to another page so the students know they have to tackle them in quite quickly and in the order I'm asking them to, and the pressure that I've given them. So I really like that idea. If you could hit OK, and then there is a question just under the arrow, if you could click there, and you should be able to answer that question for me, and it's moved on. Okay, so that's how it works. If you just want to go back, Janice, and maybe show people how to get the timer up if they've not got a button like that, that would be great.
Okay, so what Godfrey has actually done is he has created an action object. So this object on the page is linked to the clock. To get the clock, you just go into your tools, and you go down to more tools at the bottom here, and you can bring up your clock in that way. And I can click on the countdown or the count up there, and then you can see that's how we get into the settings that Godfrey was showing you. Okay?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. All right, import a PDF. I think this is another important one for the maths teacher, because how many times do we potentially use an exam question at the end of our lesson, or even just going through a test? And I've actually used this function just to take the entire test and chuck it into my flip chart straight away. So in terms of my planning, it's quite a simple way of importing a PDF. So Janice, could you just maybe show us how to import one of the flip charts that I sent you?
Sure.
Please.
So I'm just going to go up to File and down to Import here. And you can see I've got different import options. I can import PowerPoint as images or as separate objects. I could bring in Smart Notebook file, gallery items, or the common IWB file. We're just going to go for PDF here. It then opens up my computer, and I've got my file here I can locate. And I'm just going to, it was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, take the Pythagoras and trigonometry much smaller.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm just going to open that. And then it asks me how I want it to look. And I'm going to just not change anything in this. I'm going to have it open a new flip chart, and I'm just going to click Import. Okay, you can see it's now changed it. Now, it's made that quite small, but what I can do is go up here to the top of my screen, and I can fit that page to width. And then I have that test paper here that I can scroll up and down to be able to look at.
Yeah, and the other thing about that is once you've now I have the questions from the test on my screen, I can actually annotate that. So let's say I wanted to actually mark the test with the students, I can actually model what the answers should look like and annotate the mark scheme directly onto my answers. So I'm actually modelling the idea of what should a great answer look like, what would get you full marks, what would lose you marks, directly onto the questions, which I think is quite important. Yeah, you can also highlight keywords just like Janice is doing, which I think is quite crucial for us, especially with the amount of literacy that's coming into our, the subjects over the next few years.
Okay, perfect. Enough annotations there.
Yeah, Janice showing off her math skills, brilliant.
Oh,
okay.
I'm on the next page. I'm just going to come out of that, sorry, and go back to our other flip chart. There we go.
One of the other things I'd say about the import function is it isn't just about importing the PDFs. So if you are transferring from a school that uses other technologies and you've got all your lesson plans in another format, it's not that you can't use them, you just need to import them into the software and then you can use them on this as well. So yeah, that I really like as a function. Okay, the camera tool is these are literally a list of my favourite tools that I've used with Inspire over the years, and the camera's brilliant because if let's say I don't want the entire test paper to be imported into my flip chart, what I can do is take a picture of the direct question that I want from the past paper and stick it straight into the flip chart right away with quite a lot of ease. So Janice, if you just show us the exam paper and then take a picture of any of the questions and chuck it into the flip chart, that'd be brilliant.
Sure. Okay, so just to make this a little bit easier for me for this session, you can see I've put a little link here on my flip chart page to take me right to that PDF. So I'm just going to click on that, and that should open my PDF for me. And then I'm just going to go back to ActivInspire for a minute. And what I want to do is go up on my toolbar here to something called Desktop Tools. That minimizes my software and puts this little tool on my bar on my page. When I hover over top of it, you'll see it expands a wee bit and it shows me the options that are available to me. So what I could then do is set up the page where I want it. So I want to make sure that I get a question there. So I'm just going to take that first question, and I can use my camera tool, and I'm just going to use the area snapshot. So click that, and I just draw the area around the question that I want. I could expand that and bring in the other two questions underneath it if I wanted as well, and then I'm just going to paste that back to my current page. go back, to get back to my flip chart, I just go back up to that little tool, that little wizard there, and I want to go to the one that says return to flip chart, and that opens it up. And now you can see that that is an object on my page. So that snapshot is an object on my page, and I could even make that a little bit bigger to fit that on my page if I wish.
Yeah, so I mean, even there, what Janice has done is picked out these formulae that are directly on the formula sheet. So if you were, for example, doing a test where you didn't have the formula sheet for the students, you just take a photo of it and stick it straight on the board, so they can all have a look. But you don't have to, you know, you're saving yourself some printing costs there because you're actually saving an entire page on your exam paper potentially. So it can have all sorts of implications. And I've used it to take pictures of worksheets that I want students to have a look at, so I can have the questions on the board rather than actually, you know, printing out a worksheet for everyone to have, and that can be quite effective sometimes because it, you know, it gives you a bit of a variance of worksheet, or textbook. It just mixes it up a little bit. So the camera tool is brilliant. Okay, we could move on then, please.
Yep. Sorry, I was answering your question at the same time there. Okay. Okay.
This is one that is an addition to some of the newer versions of Inspire. I'm not entirely sure when it came in. Janice, do you know which version it was introduced on?
I think it's 1.6.
Right, okay. I recently went into school where I asked them to upgrade all of their ActivInspire software because they didn't have the equation editor. And as a maths teacher, it can be brilliant. So, Janice, if you could double-click on the equation I've got there.
Yep.
And that should open the equation editor because it's set up as an equation.
Yeah, we'll just give it a minute. I do find that sometimes it can take a couple seconds to open. I don't want to touch it, make my computer unhappy. So we'll give it a minute and see if it comes up.
Okay. Whilst we're waiting for that, what I will say is if you've ever used the equation editor in something like Microsoft Word or even used it on PowerPoint, then the equation editor in Inspire is very, very similar. You'll find it quite easy to adapt to, I would think. So gone are the times where I used to create my equations in Microsoft Word and then take a photo of it and import it into my flip chart. I can actually just do it all directly in the flip chart now.
Yeah, it's
seems like it might be taking a while. No.
Yeah. Let's see. It's not happy with something.
Okay, is it easiest to reload it or?
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to. For some reason it's not happy. Let me just see. Bear with me for a second, please. I'm just going to have to stop that. Sorry about this. I'm going to stop ActivInspire and we'll come back in again. Okay. Apologies.
Maybe, Janice, if you could just show us how to insert an equation, that might be a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Let me get this. No, I won't cover that one. Dashboard. Okay. Get down to the page. Here we go. So the equation editor is up in Insert Equation. And then you can see now I've changed to that little pi icon. When I click on that, it then opens up my equation editor. Okay, and I can put the equation in here. Now I should be able to, I am going to tempt fate and go back so we can edit yours here. I should be able to do that now that I've opened it once.
Brilliant.
Okay, so
if you
can
could
see what we've, yep.
Oh, no, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, so now you can see that there's the equation that was on the page that we created. We've opened it up in the equation editor again so that we can edit that.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you just highlight the plus sign for us.
Yep.
And you can, you know, if you hover over one of the menus, you can see actually there is a plus minus sign in there somewhere. It's on the one on the left. There it is. Okay, and it can insert that, and you can actually do integration with this as well. You can put in some differentiation. You can place vectors in there. So pretty much everything that we would use can be put on. So it can be quite a useful tool for editing equations in the middle of a lesson or in our planning from the beginning of the lesson. Okay, the drawing tools are pretty good actually. So one of the things I found myself doing before I discovered these was actually having this giant ruler, which invariably had pieces missing from it, and I couldn't really put it on the board. And then there was also a giant compass, which wouldn't stick to the board because some of the pieces of the compass were missing. And what Inspire's done is actually allowed me to not use any of those anymore because I can just have them electronically. So this is a particular bisector that I actually drew. So Janice is showing you that we have a ruler. There is a protractor down there, and there is a compass as well. But the ruler, so you can actually, there we are, there they go. So what we can do is we can actually draw our lines in. We can change the length of the ruler if we really want to. We can make, so there you go, it's getting bigger. You can actually change the orientation of the ruler, so you can make it go to certain degrees. And actually there's this nice function where it actually tells you what angle you're rotating it towards. So you can actually right-click on that menu there, and then you can either show the angle or hold the angle. You can get it to use the top scale or the bottom scale and change what they are. And you can even just get rid of the ruler if you want. So it's gone.
Just quickly before you go on to this one, just to explain a little bit about the math tools. These are what we call power tools. So what that means is that they're not just an image on the page that you move around, that they actually function as real tools. So you can see here, I've got the compass, so I can change my radius, and putting my pencil on there, I can draw that circle as well, take that away. Now what's really great about them is, I'm going to come back into the ruler here, okay, is you can see when I hover my pen tool over the top, if you notice there's a little dot there that's just going along the top of that ruler. So as long as I'm in a certain area close to that tool, it means that that line will snap to it. So it means I get that nice straight line. If I'm too far away, then I'm not snapped to it, and I don't get that line. Within the software, if you do have a touch board, so we now have the touch boards and we also have the active panels that are available, you can, in your settings, change that so that you see the drawing space. And what that does is it puts a little grayed out area just along the edges to tell you that you need to have your finger within that space in order for it to snap onto that ruler to be able to draw your nice straight line. What you can also do in the settings, which I think is really great, is you can change the properties of your math tools as well. So some learners would find it a bit difficult to see this sort of white-grey colored ruler on the page. So what they could do is change that and make it a light blue color so it stands out that little bit more. There's quite a lot of customization that you can do with each of the tools.
Okay, if you could actually show us the compass again, because one of the things I quite like one of the things I quite like about the compass is, so if you just draw a circle with it. Okay, now if I'm doing pie charts, for example, the problem with that is unless I mark the centre of the circle before I actually draw the circle, I'm finding it really difficult to actually measure the angles in the pie chart. But within the compass, you can actually set it to mark the centre. So, James, could you just show us how to do that, please? So you use that menu and you can actually just select mark the centre. And then from there, next time we draw a circle, it'll mark the centre with a cross, which means I now know where the middle of that circle is, and so I can draw the lines for a pie chart quite easily. Okay. Within that, if we just have a quick look at the protractor, would that be okay?
Yep. I'm aware that we're slightly over time, so I hope people are happy to just bear with us for a little bit longer.
Okay, so with the protractor, what you can actually do is when you trace, it works in the same way as the ruler, and you can go round, but it can actually draw arcs for you and sectors. So if we could just show a filled arc, would be great. So if I could set the protractor to the same sort of size as the circle that I'm doing a pie chart in, I can actually have the sectors filled in for me, so you can actually resize the protractor there and then draw a sector. Okay.
Great. Okay, I'll just reset that for you. You want me to play your little video?
Yeah, go for it. I mean, you can do, yeah. This video was actually created within Inspire. So what it's actually doing is showing students how I'm using the tools, and I'm creating like a little learning video, if you want. So the students can actually go, okay, well, what do I need to do to draw a perpendicular bisector? What should the steps look like? So I'm actually going through them. And that's one of the tools that we're going to talk about in a second, is actually the video tool, which is actually another great tool that I've used an awful lot in my teaching. Okay. So with this, what I've actually done for the video tool is I've not had any sound on it, and the idea is that I'll create the video, run the video to the students, and then they actually get to do their little John Motson bit where they get to put the commentary back in and explain to me what actually was happening in the video at every single stage. So I'll pause the video at points and say, okay, what happened there, what happened there. So we'll maybe watch it through once and then have a little go at it a second time. I don't know if you want to show us how to do a video, or we push the time.
I'm probably going to leave that for this. So just to tell you that you can, and again, we've done this in other webinars, so it might be useful to look back to one of our other webinars where we show this. You can also find this information on Promethean Planet. Now we'll cover that at the end. I'm just a wee bit aware of the time, so I don't want to be going for too much longer. But Screen Recorder is here under your tools, under More Tools, and that's a good place to have a look at and play around with. Okay, so this is just another use of the revision videos where I've just created some, which are, you know, I'm just using the video tool that we just talked about, so it might be worth moving on from this, Janice. Okay. And here's another one, which I think is actually a recording of the lesson. So you can actually use this live in lessons and record what you're doing, so that if you end up with cover implications, you could replay the lesson to another class, potentially, or even get students to watch it back as a recap for the kids that missed your lessons. Okay, and it is showing again the same sort of function. And these little video files are really powerful because, you know, you don't have to just use them within ActivInspire. So if you've done a lesson and taken a recording with the board, you can then put those up on a VLE and be able to share them so that students are able to get them from home as well. So very versatile. So again, to get that video recorder, you just go to Tools, More Tools, and then down at the bottom, here you've got the Screen Recorder. Sorry, Godfrey, we've got some noise. I think it's coming from yours. Yeah, sorry, I've just got some people in here. That's okay, no sorry. Yeah, okay. So that's basically us finished. I think absolutely fantastic ideas, Godfrey, and I know that we've had some comments coming in, people enjoying what they're seeing and some new ideas and things that they hadn't realized that you could do with the software as well. And that's what these sessions are about, is really just sharing ideas and giving you things to take away and try for yourselves in your classroom. So just to finish up very quickly, in case you don't know, we do have an online user community called PrometheanPlanet.com. what I'm going to do, Godfrey, is I'm going to mute you if that's okay. So that you don't
Yeah, sorry.
noise there. Okay, that's a bit better. So we've got PrometheanPlanet.com, and this is a free user community. We do have language variants as well, so you can check that out. Right now you can see I've got a snapshot of the UK site, but you can click up here and find out the language variants. But there is a huge amount of resources for teachers on this. Everything from little active tip videos that tell you how to use particular features of the software, and they always show it in a learning and teaching context, to forums where other users are sharing their experiences of using this technology, to resources. So there are thousands and thousands of resources that are teacher created that people are sharing, and you can download and use within your own software in your own classroom. And I have to say that your subject area is a very popular one, and of course it is worldwide. So therefore, we have loads of math resources in particular that are worth looking at. So you can do a search for resources just by putting in a keyword here and doing a search, or you could go into the advanced search. Advanced search lets you narrow things down very quickly. So you could be looking for a specific language or country, specific topic, specific age range, so you can find that kind of information in there. Okay, so quite a lot in there. If you aren't a member of Planet already, I do recommend that you get yourself on there. We also have quite a lot of math themes on Promethean Planet. Now the themes you can find by going up to resources, and you'll get a little drop down and it will tell you the themes that are there. You just click on themes. So what the themes do is they drag together all of the blogs, forums, resources, videos, advice, things that we have to do with particular themes. You can see that we've got various math available themes on there as well, so they are worth having a look at. Also on Promethean Planet, we do have publisher-created material. So the bulk of the resources that we have are free for anybody to download. So they are teacher-created. You can go in and download for free. We have a lot of really great partnerships as well that we worked with, so organizations around the world who create free resources for use in classroom anyway. But we also have done some work with some publishers. And again, math being a hot topic, we do have a lot of publishers that we worked with. So these are high quality publisher created resources done in ActivInspire. You can buy single lessons, or you can buy a group of lessons on a particular topic, depending on which of these publishers that you look at. And they're anywhere from, I think, £1 up to $5.99, so they're not expensive either, but a good place to look if you're looking for supplementary resources. Just to finish off, I put contact details up here. Now, Sam, as I said, wasn't able to join us today, so my contact details are on here. If you do have any questions, anything that we didn't answer today, please do just send me an email and I will get back to you and answer them as best I can, or help you out as best I can. I also do have a Promethean UK and I, so Promethean UK and Ireland Twitter handle. So if you are on Twitter, please do follow us, because I try and put on a lot of different hints, tips and advice and resources and information up there as well that might be useful to you as well. So I always love to get more followers on there if we can. I did have one question I saw that came in. This flip chart, I don't generally share the actual flip chart after the webinar. I will have a word with Godfrey and see if he's happy for me to share these ideas. If he is, I'll then put those up on Promethean Planet, and what I'll do is I'll email the the attendees on the registration list for the link to that. But in the meantime, once I get this recording back to me, I will upload it onto Promethean Planet, so it's likely to be Monday. Sorry, not onto Promethean Planet, onto YouTube channel. Likely be Monday. But what you will get, because you have registered for this session, is an automated email with the link that will take you directly to my YouTube page once that video is up there. And you can view that again as many times as you want to be able to use the information. Anyway, I hope that you did find that useful today, and I do apologize that we've gone a little bit over time, but I hope that it was worthwhile for you today. And I'm just going to quickly unmute Godfrey, and if you would like to say goodbye as well, Godfrey.
Yes, just thanks for joining and thanks for taking the time to have a little watch and listen of what we've been using ActivInspire for. Hope you found it useful.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time tonight or this afternoon or this morning or wherever you are in the world. And I hope you'll join another one for us. Thanks, Godfrey. Goodbye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.